The 1993 £1 coin is part of the United Kingdom's modern decimal coinage system, which had been introduced in 1971 as part of a sweeping overhaul of Britain's currency. The pound coin itself did not appear until over a decade later, in 1983, when it replaced the £1 banknote, a change made for reasons of cost, durability, and practicality. By the early 1990s, the £1 coin had already established itself as a staple of daily British transactions, and 1993's issue represented both a continuation of the denomination's evolving design program and a reflection of the United Kingdom's internal diversity. The 1993 £1 coin was struck during a period when the Royal Mint was issuing designs that represented the four constituent parts of the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, on a rotating basis. Each year in the cycle featured a reverse design symbolizing one of these nations, accompanied by an obverse portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. The 1993 issue featured the oak tree design, representing England, designed by the heraldic artist Derek Gorange. This design depicts a sturdy, stylized oak tree encircled by a royal coronet. The oak is not merely a botanical choice, it is one of the most potent symbols in English history, associated with strength, endurance, and heritage. Oaks are referenced in literature, heraldry, and national iconography, and in the context of the coin, the design subtly ties England's natural history to its monarchy. The coronet surrounding the oak signifies the coin's connection to the crown, a reminder that currency is both an economic tool and an instrument of state symbolism. The obverse of the 1993 £1 coin bears the third definitive portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, sculpted by Raphael Makhlouf and used on UK coinage from 1985 until 1997. In this depiction, the Queen is shown wearing the George IV state diadem, an ornate crown featuring roses, shamrocks, and thistles, symbols representing the nations of the UK. The Makhlouf portrait is notable for its elegance and formality. Makhlouf intentionally portrayed the Queen with a timeless, almost idealized grace, avoiding the temptation to capture aging features in favor of a regal, enduring image. Around the obverse runs the Latin legend, Elizabeth II DG. Reg. FD 1993, an abbreviation of Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina Fidei Defensor, meaning, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This inscription is part of a long British numismatic tradition dating back centuries. Technically, the 1993 £1 coin was struck in nickel brass, a copper alloy containing 70% copper, 24.5% zinc, and 5.5% nickel. This composition gives the coin its distinctive golden color, a hue chosen deliberately to make it easily distinguishable from other circulating coins. The coin's diameter is 22.5 mm, its thickness is 3.15 mm, and it weighs 9.5 grams. Its edge is not plain but milled and also inscribed, another British tradition aimed at both aesthetic refinement and anti-counterfeiting measures. The edge inscription for the 1993 English £1 coin reads, Decus et tutemen, a Latin phrase meaning, an ornament and a safeguard. This phrase has appeared on British coins since the 17th century, originating under Charles II, and it alludes both to the decorative nature of the inscription and to its practical purpose of deterring coin clipping, an old practice where small amounts of precious metal were shaved off the edges of coins. The minting process for the 1993 £1 coin involved the use of high-tonnage presses at the Royal Mint's Llantrisant facility in Wales. Modern minting techniques allowed for sharp, detailed designs, but the Royal Mint still maintained a meticulous tradition of engraving and die preparation that echoed earlier, more manual methods. Proof versions of the coin were also produced for collectors, struck multiple times with specially prepared dies to produce a mirror-like finish and crisp detail. These proof coins were often packaged in presentation cases and sold directly to numismatists, sometimes as part of annual sets. Economically, the early 1990s in Britain were a time of slow recovery from the recession of the late 1980s and early 1990s. Inflation was relatively low compared to the previous decades, and the pound sterling remained a strong symbol of national economic independence, especially after the UK's dramatic withdrawal from the European exchange rate mechanism in September 1992, an event remembered as Black Wednesday. Against this backdrop, the pound coin, and particularly its designs celebrating the UK's internal nations, took on an added symbolic weight. The 1993 English £1 coin, with its oak and coronet, could be seen as quietly reinforcing national resilience and unity after a period of political and economic turbulence. Culturally, the oak motif resonates far beyond heraldry. In English history, The oak is famously linked to the tale of Charles II hiding in an oak tree to escape capture after the Battle of Worcester in 1651. Oaks also feature prominently in rural landscapes, literature from Shakespeare to Wordsworth, and in military insignia. By placing the oak within a coronet, the coin's reverse design tied this deeply rooted national symbol directly to the monarchy, making the coin as much a miniature work of patriotic art as a means of exchange. In terms of mintage, millions of £1,993 coins were produced for circulation, ensuring that they became a common sight in wallets and tills across the country. While circulating examples are generally of low numismatic value unless in exceptional condition, uncirculated and proof specimens hold collector appeal, particularly as part of complete sets representing the four nations design cycle. Over time, however, the widespread issue of £1 coins, and the eventual introduction of a new 12-sided £1 coin in 2017, has made certain earlier issues more collectible, especially in pristine condition. The 1993 coin also fits into a broader numismatic narrative, the ongoing debate in the 1990s and 2000s about the £1 coin's susceptibility to counterfeiting. While counterfeiting was not yet at crisis levels in 1993, the coin's round shape and composition made it easier to forge than later designs. By the early 2010s, estimates suggested that as many as 1 in 30 £1 coins in circulation were counterfeit, a problem ultimately addressed by replacing the old coin entirely. The 1993 version, however, remains a legitimate and historically significant example of the round pound era. From a collector's perspective, the 1993 £1 coin offers multiple avenues of interest. As part of the Makhlouf portrait series, as an example of Derek Gorange's heraldic artistry, as a representation of England in the Four Nations cycle, and as a tangible piece of Britain's early 1990s economic and political climate. Proof and uncirculated examples, especially those still in their original packaging, are prized for their sharp detail and lustrous finish. Circulated examples may carry sentimental rather than monetary value, evoking memories of daily life, commerce, and a pre-Euro, pre-contactless payment Britain. Even in the broader history of British currency, the 1993 £1 coin stands as a snapshot of a specific moment, a united yet internally diverse kingdom, a monarchy that blended tradition with modernity, and a mint that combined centuries-old symbolism with late 20th century minting precision. While small in size, it is dense with meaning, an everyday object that silently communicates national identity, political stability, and cultural heritage to anyone who cares to look closely. The 1984 £1 coin occupies an important place in the story of modern British currency, coming just 1 year after the introduction of the £1 coin itself in 1983. The early 1980s were a time of economic restructuring in the United Kingdom, political assertiveness under Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and technological modernization at the Royal Mint. The decision to replace the paper £1 note with a coin had been made for several reasons, primarily cost and durability, as banknotes wore out far more quickly than coins, but also because a coin could serve as a highly visible and tactile symbol of the nation's unity. The new £1 coin was to be of substantial size, weight, and design quality, something the public would feel in their hands as distinctly different from smaller change. The 1984 £1 coin continued the Four Nations reverse design cycle that had been introduced with the first £1 coin a year earlier. In this system, each year's reverse would feature a heraldic emblem representing one of the United Kingdom's constituent nations, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, in rotation, creating a sense of shared representation and national balance. For the 1984 issue, the Royal Mint selected the Thistle encircled by a royal coronet, a design representing Scotland. The Thistle, with its prickly leaves and purple flower, has been Scotland's national emblem for centuries, associated with resilience, protection, and ancient legend. According to folklore, an invading Norseman once stepped barefoot on a thistle, his cry of pain alerting Scottish defenders to the enemy's presence. On the coin, the thistle is crowned, literally, by the coronet of the Scottish monarchy, a reminder that while Scotland is part of the United Kingdom, it has its own heraldic traditions and royal symbols. The reverse was designed by Leslie Durbin, a master silversmith and designer whose work in heraldic and medallic art is highly respected. His thistle design is finely detailed, showing the texture of the leaves and the ornate shape of the coronet, yet simplified enough to be reproduced clearly on millions of small metal discs. On the obverse, the 1984 £1 coin bore the second definitive portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created by Arnold Machen. This portrait had been used on British decimal coinage since 1968, making it familiar to the public, but here it took on a new prominence on the larger £1 flan. In Machen's design, the Queen wears the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a gift from her grandmother, Queen Mary. The portrait is serene, formal, and relatively youthful, reflecting the Queen in her late 30s when it was first created, capturing the continuity of monarchy across decades. Around the portrait runs the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II d.G. Reg. FD 1984, an abbreviation of Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina Fidei Defensor, meaning, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith, a phrase rooted in both religious and constitutional tradition. Technically, the coin was struck in nickel brass, an alloy of 70% copper, 24.5% zinc, and 5.5% nickel, chosen for its durability, corrosion resistance, and distinctive golden color. It weighed 9.5 grams, measured 22.5 millimeters in diameter, and was 3.15 millimeters thick, giving it a substantial feel. Its edge was both milled and inscribed, bearing the phrase, Nemo me impune lacessit, Latin for, no one provokes me with impunity. This motto is deeply associated with Scotland, appearing in Scottish heraldry and on regimental badges, and its inclusion further reinforced the coin's Scottish theme. The edge inscription also served as a security feature, making counterfeiting more difficult, while the milled edge deterred the centuries-old practice of coin clipping. The minting process at the Royal Mint's Llantrisant facility in Wales combined precision engineering with centuries-old craftsmanship. Blanks of nickel brass were punched from rolled sheets, then annealed heat-treated to soften the metal for striking. They were then cleaned and polished before being fed into high-tonnage coining presses, where hardened steel dies bearing the obverse and reverse designs struck them with enough pressure to imprint even the finest details. Proof versions for collectors were struck multiple times on specially prepared blanks using polished dies, producing a deep mirror-like background and frosted relief. In 1984, Britain's economy was in the midst of significant change. The government pursued free market reforms, privatization of state industries, and a strong anti-inflation monetary policy. Against this backdrop, the £1 coin's bold designs, emphasizing the unity and heritage of the UK, could be seen as a subtle cultural counterbalance to the economic turbulence of the time. The Scottish Thistle was a particularly resonant choice, as debates over Scottish identity, devolution, and economic policy were active in political discourse. For the public, the 1984 £1 coin was still something of a novelty. Only the year before, the £1 note had been in daily use, and many people found the new coin heavy, unfamiliar, and occasionally easy to confuse with the slightly smaller 20p piece in dim light. Nevertheless, the durability of the coin meant that it quickly became embedded in daily commerce, from supermarket tills to vending machines. Collectors, meanwhile, noted that each year's change of reverse design created an incentive to keep examples from different years, especially in mint condition. From a numismatic standpoint, the 1984 £1 coin is notable as the second year of issue and is the first to feature a design other than the English royal arms introduced in 1983. It is therefore essential to any complete collection of round pound coins. While circulated examples are common and hold minimal value above face unless in exceptional condition, uncirculated and proof strikes, especially in their original presentation cases, are more desirable. Culturally, the combination of the thistle and the motto Nemo me impune lacessit on the coin's edge made the 1984 issue a tiny but tangible assertion of Scotland's distinct place within the Union. It carried centuries of history in a 22.5mm circle. The thistle is an ancient emblem of defense, the coronet is a marker of royal authority, the Latin motto is a statement of defiance, and the Queen's portrait is a symbol of constitutional continuity. In later years, the Royal Mint would continue the Four Nations series, cycling through different floral and heraldic designs, but the 1984 coin stands out for having set the precedent for the way each constituent nation would be honored in turn. Even after the introduction of the 12-sided £1 coin in 2017, which rendered the round pound obsolete for circulation, the 1984 £1 remains a sought-after piece for those interested in the full story of Britain's modern coinage.